Hey guys, so my guest today is Steffo Shambo. Steffo is a founder and a head coach in the tantricacademy.com. So as you might be guessing, today we talked about Tantra. We talked about the basics, like what are the myths and the truths about this ancient practice. And we talked about energetics. What are these energies in the body and how can you notice and recognize them? And what's the practical use of this in the real world? As well, we talked about some male aspects of sexuality, including porn addiction, masturbation, and ejaculation. So if you're curious about finding out more about these topics, keep listening. Enjoy. I think you're not the typical Swedish guy, I would say. So share more about your life journey. How did you become who you are today?
Oh, my life journey. Well, where do you want to start?
What do you find important and relevant, I would say?
What I find important?
Yeah, you can start at high school at like things that influenced your life and that shaped you who you are today.
Right.
Whatever you think is.
Well, to track things backwards to where I ended up here today in Thailand, doing what I'm doing, working with these things, started really early on, right? So when I was a boy growing up in Sweden, I always felt this like curiosity towards the unknown, towards the meaning of life and things like that, right? So I always had that curiosity. And then in my teens or early 20s, I had this kind of awakening experience. So for the first time in my life, I had like a distance between my thoughts and my emotions and who I am. And this kind of awakening experience, like to really feel this and experience that in my life, really switched everything around, you know. Mm-hmm. And from that point onwards, it's like I made a big shift in my life. I became vegetarian, you know, I stopped eating meat, you know, I stopped smoking and drinking alcohol, like a lot of different things, right? So my life shifted. Mm-hmm. And
I just curious, wasn't it scary when this awakening happened, when you had this like intense, because it sounds intense?
No, not at all. The opposite. It was liberating. It was freeing. It was feeling like, you know, a liberation, you know, so it felt mm-hmm. like, wow, you know, it's like there's more to life. There is like, I can find more meaning to life. I can find more passion and like a path in life. You know what I mean? So It's kind of like totally opposite of scary. It's like, finally, I feel not scared of life. I feel like I can actually, you know, go out in life and live more, be more alive and fearless even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, you talked about alcohol and you changed your lifestyle completely.
Yeah. And then that led me to go on this quest for truth. All right. So I wanted to go on a pilgrimage, just travel the world by myself, solo, non-stop, single, you know, one-way ticket, right? And not really knowing where I'm going or what I will do there. There was no plans, you know, no organization, you know, just one-way tickets. I just picked the country beforehand, you know, and I was not knowing which other country I will go to afterwards. So what happened was that I spent two years, the first trip, and then another 2 years, the second trip. So 4 years in total, just traveling the world, 21 countries. And on this trip, I found myself. I grew a lot, you know, like I became more of who I am today. And I found, you know, what I was looking for, you know, and that is like a path to what I had discovered before, this like inner experience, this awakening. I found actually a path that is talking about exactly what I had experienced. And then I felt home. It was like a click. And I felt like, okay, this is what I need to do with my life. And that started And then it evolved, it grew, you know, from that, just following my heart of like, this is what I need to do. One thing led to another. And then finally I'm here, you know, like, you know, now I'm doing this, which is more catering towards like helping spreading this message and helping other people, men in particular, having that same experience, you know, and trying to help other who was stuck what I was stuck in before, of that time of, you know, like confusion, feeling lost, feeling not good about myself, not knowing who I am really, and, you know, stuck in that rut and that pattern that we all can recognize, right, at some point in our lives. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
I see. Well, I've traveled, I think you're kind of a unicorn, because I traveled Southeastern Asia for a few months, and the question like, what are you doing here, or why are you traveling? Everyone answers the same. I'm trying to travel and find out who I am, discover my purpose. And you're actually the first person who answered, who found this thing like in its wholeness, based on what I hear you saying. So that's really nice. So finally you stumbled upon Tantra, and you went really deep. How did you discover Tantra? What was your first touch?
On this journey, you know, so on the end of this years of traveling the world, like I said, I found a path, and that was the path: Tantra yoga and Tantra, you know. So you know, studying in some of the biggest schools in the world and different teachers in India and in Thailand. And so I ended up staying in Thailand and India for most of the year, almost all year round for the last 8-9 years or so, and just studying and immersing myself in this, you know, disciplines, scriptures, philosophies, techniques, and practicing many years by myself, you know, never thinking that I would share this or become a teacher or anything. I just wanted to explore my own inner world. And then naturally, I just felt like I wanted to become a teacher. So I became a yoga teacher, and then I felt I wanted to do more. And then I became a Tantra teacher, and then I felt I wanted to do even more. And then I became a men's coach, right? So now that's like the final stage of this. So that's kind of how I discovered that. And I'm sorry if you hear the noise, but there's like
No, it's okay.
People cutting the grass just right outside.
No, it's okay. So talking about Tantra, I think in Europe it's still kind of a taboo. I think part of the reasons why is that there is this notion of tantric massage, which became extremely vulgarized. So what do you, in your words and in your experience, what is Tantra and what is not Tantra that people very often think that Tantra is?
Yeah, that's a really good question that a lot of people ask themselves, ask other people. It's one of the first questions I get in my group as well. And, you know, like people are confused about this because there's like two different lineages or paths of Tantra nowadays. One is the modern new Tantra, which is Neo-Tantra, which is more about the sexual aspect, right? With the massage, with cultivating sexuality and, you know, that kind of stuff. And the other part is the older, the ancient, the techniques of actually working with your energy body, working with your energy centers, working with, you know, bringing that energy upwards through the top of the head. You know, that's more the traditional classical form of Tantra that is neglected many times. So both of these two paths, you could say, are now being called Tantra, right? So that causes confusion. So what a lot of people do to diminish that confusion is to call the sexual one Neo-Tantra and the classical one Classical Tantra. So, and then we have two different names for them so we know what we talk about. And they sometimes overlap, you know? It's not like they are totally exclusive. But some, for example, when it's just like Tantra massage workshop, usually it's kind of almost close to zero classical Tantra stuff in it. But other things, they do overlap as well.
I see. So when we talk about the classical Tantra, what does it all include, and how would a regular Joe understand it the most easily?
Mm-hmm. So it's an esoteric practice that is for the common man that wants to live in the world. So it's a spiritual path for the householder, right? So
Hmm.
it's not, if you think about a monk or a nun or a priest that go into a cave and meditate in the mountain away and renounce the world, pleasures, and family. That's the Tantra is the opposite of that renunciation. So instead, it's like, how can I walk a spiritual path while being part of this world, being a father, being having work, friends, enjoying life, enjoying food, enjoying sex. That is the tantric path, right? So you spiritualize your daily life, and it's usually looks like tantra yoga usually looks like working with energy, right? So you have the energy body. The whole anatomy of tantra is that we have an energy body, we have energy centers, and we can manipulate this energy to flow in different channels of the body to produce certain states, feelings, and evolution of consciousness. So at the end goal is to expand consciousness and to you know, reach this liberation, right? Many also practices tantra for other reasons, such as health and well-being and things like that. But the ultimate goal is that, to realize oneself.
I see. I see. It's interesting because now I was just, I had a thought how I started uh, with these, like with the energy work and manipulating my own energy. And I remember that I was really scared that I will fuck something up. That like this thing is working on its own. I did not even know that it exists, and now I'll start to interfere, and like something will just blow up on my back or something. Do you think it's even? Then I learned that it's basically impossible. That you cannot really hurt yourself manipulating your own energy. Is this true?
No, there is some danger there, especially when it comes to the more advanced techniques, you know, of classical tantra, because it used to be, back in the days, 1,000 years ago or so, it used to be a secret practice that was not written down. It was just passed on orally, traditionally, like from disciple to student, and only when the student was ready for it, and in installments. So, you know, you didn't get the advanced practices over here in the beginning. You start with, you know, some basic things, and then you progress like step by step and you build it up, right? So
Yeah.
that's not the case anymore. Today it's not a secret practice. It's the time of revelation. A lot of the teachers think that now in this day and age it's necessary to bring this out to the mainstream to, so we can benefit from it, and, you know, as a global entity, just like evolve and expand in that way, like a global family. So so now it's not that secret practice anymore. It's out there. The books have been written about it, you know, so you can find it. A lot of the things you can find in books, not everything, right? But so so there is some danger to kind of going to the end and like finding those like really strong practices of like stirring kundalini or waking kundalini, right? But your body is not prepared for it. It didn't do the groundwork, the foundation, right? So the body can't handle that capacity of energy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not really that it's dangerous to liberate yourself. It's just that if you do it out of ignorance, or you're forcing things, like you don't use common sense, you don't have guidance, you don't have a mentor, you don't have a teacher, then it can be dangerous. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend anyone to go on this path for too long without someone that can guide them, that's been there before, so you don't have to do the same mistakes or to, you know, maybe damage your body or nervous system or something like that. So there are those kind of scary stories about people who accidentally had a Kundalini awakening and they had some trauma around that, you know.
I see.
So
it's like a common sense question, I would say, right? Like if you decide to run a marathon in 2 weeks because you're just excited, obviously you're going to get hurt. So it's the same with the energy work and Tantra, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So is there any exercise or some kind of, because for people who never experienced this, and sometimes I struggle with how to, you know, when someone asks these things, like how to start with the whole thing, like how to actually introduce Tantra to someone who never talked about it, never heard about it. And anytime you say the word energy, they label you as New Age. So I wonder, how do you explain these like energetic concepts like to people who you never talked about it with? Or
yeah,
how do you, like, is there any like an example or an exercise you give to prove that the energy circulating in the body actually is a thing?
Right. And first of all, I think it's a good question because, you know, I come to the point of like, I don't want to try to convince people like that they should do this or they should practice this, you know. Like I'm more speaking to people who are ready to hear it or want to hear it, right? So I wouldn't force my message or my teachings upon anyone. I let them come to me, and then, you know, like you ask me questions and I'm really happy to answer them in detail, in depth. I have no problems with that. But if you wouldn't answer ask these questions, you know, I feel like I wouldn't tell you anything of these things, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like then not everyone is wanting to practice a spiritual path or have a spiritual practice, I mean. And that's totally fine. Everyone has their own path in life and their own way of doing things, right? So so that's the first thing I would say. But the second thing I would say, if there's someone that genuinely want to trying to get into this area, but they're like highly skeptical or they don't like they don't know where to start, I would just say, like, what is emotions, first of all? Like, if I ask you, Maros, like, how do you feel love? Like, where in the body do you feel love?
I feel body here in around my heart area in the center, and it's like an expanding sensation of warmth.
Yeah, right. So that's something like everyone or almost everyone would point to the heart and say like there's some warmth there, some expansion, some like tingling or something, right? So what is that? That's what I call energy. And if you think of that something else, like if you overthink, you've been studying for like a long time, hours and hours to a test, like where do you feel that, you know, sensation of like overthinking, studying, all that?
Yeah, in my back pain first, but in my head, like I had my head overheated.
Yeah, right, in your back, yeah. So we have all these places. So that's another center. We feel like maybe like a headache here, or frowning, or like some kind of sensation. So that's another sensation of energy. And then you have fear. We usually feel it in the stomach, right? And then you have a sexual energy. We all know where we feel that, in the genitals, right? So we have all these centers and we do feel them on a daily basis, and we can even point to that. Like I feel here, already 4 centers, right? And we cannot really see it. So where is love? Okay, I can't like look and see that somewhere, right? So that is what I start with. Everyone can relate to that because they have sensed this, but they never labeled it and put it in this perspective of energy.
I see. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. When I was trying to explain it to my brother, I think, and what I found working is like, if you look at your hand and you keep looking at one hand for like several seconds, or let's say a minute, and you try to feel the sensation in the fingers and in the palm, you can actually feel the difference between hands. Like you can feel one hand more than the other. And
Yeah.
there's no way to describe this other than that you just feel more energy in the other one. And if like thinking about where focus goes and energy flows, like this is, you basically caused it this way. So this is like a little metaphor, but I like yours as well. It goes like a step further, I would say.
Yeah. No, what the example you give is a very common one as well, and it's actually what we work with in Tantra Yoga, to use the mind to direct the energy. So, for example, if you want to expand the heart, you would not just like do an asana which opens the heart. You would also use your mind to put your attention here and breathe into this point. So now you have your body, your breath, and your mind focusing on the same thing, and that is so much more powerful. And then you will feel that way more. Then you just do a posture and you think about what you're going to cook for dinner afterwards and things like that. So so yeah, when you say this experience of feeling the energy in one hand more than the other, yeah, it's totally relatable, and many people can feel that. It just requires you to just sit down and do that exercise for a moment, right?
Do you think it's suitable for men to start with the sexual practices of Tantra, or like the Qigong sexual cultivation, on their own, without any teacher, without any guidance?
Yes and no. Yes, because it's better now than later. It's better to start somewhere, to maybe read a book about it, to understand it intellectually at least. So you have like an intellectual reference of what we're talking about. But then when it comes more to embodied experience, to avoid the pitfalls and the dangers of like doing some of these neo-tantric practices, then it's better to have guidance, because you rather spend the time in self-development than in healing the injuries that you made to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I would say yes and no. Yes, because mastering sexual energy is like one of the keys in life. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, because it's like in Tantra, we say that sexual energy is actually the creative energy itself, like this power of how to being birthed into this world is through the sexual energy, right? So it has so much power and potential. And when we use that in our life for our benefit, our life becomes so much better, happier, smoother, more financially stable. We can just use this for everything. So it's kind of like a foundation. With not having that, you can have a great relationship, you can have kids, you can have a job, but still not feeling satisfied, still feeling that something is missing, right? So for me, I feel like this thing is like the key, the foundation to live that kind of life, So to start there, sooner than later, I think is a good thing. So dive into it, but just don't go and do all this crazy practices without the guidance of someone.
Yeah. I wonder, what does it look like when you having a lot of experience and basically accredited education? What does it look like when the sexual energy is mastered? From what from my basically understanding from the books I've read and from the courses I've taken, it's like on the very basic level, it's the ability to make laugh without the orgasm being the purpose, and just enjoying the flow of the whole thing, and just magnifying the positive emotions that arise. And basically, if anything negative comes up, just to be able to heal it, clear it, and just step into this vulnerability. And through this, sex does not become like like a one-off event, like in the closet, that very often it looks like that in the Western world, but it becomes like a normal part of everyday life with and it's just so much richer. So what does it look like when you talk about all these advanced practices and going really, really far in this area? What does it look like when it's mastered? What can be the ultimate goal in practical terms?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What you say basically, you know, when you master the sexual energy, it's like you have control over this aspect of your body instead of your body and your cravings and lust have control over you. So it's like we reverse that role, and so you become more spiritual in a sense, because now you can use more of yourself for your spiritual evolution. So I like to call it like spiritualizing your sexuality, or going from sex to spirit. So you will feel more connected to the divine, but also you feel more connected to your partner, lover, wife, husband, whatever it is. And so that has a tremendous healing in itself, you know, when you can have that control in your life. And it brings so much for men confidence, because now they know they can, instead of being a victim of circumstances of like, oh, I came too quickly, or I cannot last long enough, my erection is gone, I have a low self-esteem, I you know, have anxiety of performance or approaching women, whatever it is. All those things are now, you know, under your control. So then you just relax. Men just relax more, because now it doesn't really matter how long you last, but what really matters is like that you have the option. You can choose like what you want. When we have that option, we feel empowered, and thus we have confidence, and then we can just relax and drop that and rest in this confidence. And that confidence will, you know, ooze out in our entire life, because it's like it's not back in our minds anymore. It's just nagging our soul every day, whatever we do. But now we can just, that's settled, and we just focus on other things, you know, like what we want to birth in this world, or, you know, pursue, or, you know, give back, or whatever it might be. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's yes. I think what I've taken the most out of it is that there is this, like, it's impossible to lie to your subconscious mind. Like you cannot really lie to yourself believing because you know you're lying, right?
Right.
So like you cannot have this, like the issues men face in the bedroom always have to be transferred to the real life. So when you build up your confidence in this area, and I mean confidence in a sense that it's natural, it's normal, and it's flowing, and you don't have to have this like anxiety about performing and doing things right, it must transform your outside life as well.
100%. 100%. Imagine that power we talked about in the sexual energy, right? It can birth a new human being, right? It's like the force of nature in itself, mother nature, right? Like that power. Imagine if you put all that power in your control and direct it towards your career or finances. You know, don't you think that you're just going to generate so much more money than you did before, when you were scattered and self-doubts, and you didn't have a vision, or you're not sure about yourself, or you couldn't make decisions, right? Like it's so much more powerful. You will literally see, you know, if that's your focus. Let's say you want to use your sexual energy to increase your income, finance. You will literally see how you become more financial abundant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one way of thinking about it. You know, if you're the entrepreneurial spirit, that's one way, but there can be other things. You want to birth, you know, a non-profit project into the world, or you want to, you know, become healthier, and you're into fitness. You want to exercise and get a really good physique and body. You use it for that. You know, whatever it is you're into, you use it for that.
Yeah, I've heard about this thing called sexual rituals in Tantra, but I never had a chance to dig deeper in that. And what I've read that they do, it's like practicing sexual cultivation, like a proactively managing the sexual flow, and then focusing your mind on what you want to create. Is this something that you describe with the physique and the entrepreneurship?
Yes, 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 yes.
Can you talk about this a little bit more? How this thing works?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's hard to just describe in a short period of time and then trying by yourself, right? So, but I will just try to just give you an idea of how it can look like. But yeah, you know, like directing this energy towards, you know, like you cultivate in the sexual energy, you don't waste it, right? And then you start to harness that more and more and more. So you need to learn how to maintain higher levels of energy in your body. If you can't, you will blow it, right? So when you start to build that up and up, you start to direct it, you know, like we said before, like you focus on your hand with the attention of your mind, and then you start to direct it with your mind, you know, working on your mindset and things like that. Into this other area. So it's kind of like steps here. We have like cultivation, and then we harness it, and then we direct it, right? So that's one way. That's kind of like the neo-tantric way of doing it. But then you have this like real tantric sexual rituals from the classical tantra, which is nothing like that. They're more still kind of secretive. You can't really find them. There's not really practice much, you know, rare occasions, but they are more esoteric. You work with energy. They might involve sex, but they also might involve you know, non-penetrative sex. You know, you don't have to necessarily penetrate someone to do this ritual. You can just stir the sexual energy in your body, and then you do certain rituals which can be you know, preparations of different offerings, like offering earth, water, fire, and things like that on an altar to a specific goddess in the universe for that specific energy that you want to create. That can be, for example, like adorning yourself and setting the space and time for this. Like you check on an astrological date and time that is more conducive to this kind of energies. So you do it in a specific time, a specific setting, a specific preparation of like cleansing, purification. You might do some yoga practice leading up to this, even like a few days before. And you do these offerings of different elements, and you connect to certain goddesses in the universe that the tantric philosophy believes that, or separates these qualities in the world by deities, right? And then you connect with this. So that's just like a simplified explanation of what it can contain. And then it's specific like protocols that you follow in this. So it's like steps, mantras, and things like that.
I see. Well, that sounds really advanced, like and really, yeah, advanced, I would say.
It would be, because that's why it's not really accessible today. It's way more rare and hard to find.
I see. Okay, I saw on your website you have multiple articles about semen retention and basically non-ejaculatory orgasms for men. How do you describe this in simple terms? That like what's the principle of separating ejaculation from the orgasm, and how can this be used to enhance your basically life and your health?
The principle is basically to decondition what we learned from porn and like masturbation as teenagers and stuff like that, which is fast under stress, often not being caught by our parents and stuff like that. So we conditioned ourselves to also watching all these, you know, happy endings in these movies and stuff like that, that ejaculation equals orgasm. So that's a condition which is actually not true. Most people don't realize that they are two separate things, because many times you feel orgasmic even before you ejaculate, right? Most men feel like 5 to 10 seconds before they've already experienced the orgasm, right? They feel already that, you know, good sensation. And a lot of men don't ejaculate, they just have an orgasm. So we know it's a fact that, you know, you can be orgasmic without having ejaculation, and they don't even happen exactly at the same time. There is actually a delay of a few seconds between the orgasm and the ejaculation. So what does that mean? They are two separate things, and we can actually expand this delay here more and more and more and more and more until they become two separate things. So we can have one or the other on command, basically, how we want them, you know. So this is the, you know, the fundamental principle of non-ejaculation or semen retention, is to expand this gap between them, so you have control instead of this condition now that most of us guys have been conditions for years, if not decades, that, you know, they come together, and so it will take some time to spread them apart again and experience something else. So yeah, it's a hard work to get there, but it's well worth it. You know, once you get there, it's no coming back. You know, it's like gaining a superpower, and that superpower is just like we said before, being in control, having that choice to, I want to last 3 minutes or 30 minutes or 3 hours, whatever it is, just having that control is amazing, you know. And then it fuels everything what we said. You can use it for rituals, you can use it for sex magic, you can use it for finances, you can use it for confidence, whatever it is, just more energy and health in your body, more testosterone in your body. There's so many levels. Now, that the article is 5,000 words just on this subject, so there's a lot to say about it, but the benefits are on all levels: spiritual, energetical, emotional, physical. Like I said, physical, even like more health, more energy, more testosterone. That's what I want to say. Testosterone increases and you feel better just from that alone.
Yeah. I started to do this 2 years ago, and I took an online course, and I was just doing the practices in the morning, and then I forgot why I was doing those practices, and things just started to happen a few months later, because I was also meditating apart from them. So I kind of like put the thing together a little bit by accident, I would say. But what I really like, what Dr. Glover says, the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy, he says that when you do this kind of work and when you don't ejaculate, then basically the sex never ends. Because like men, we are conditioned that the sex ends when the ejaculation is there, or at least temporarily. Like we just can't go on further. And he says that when he doesn't ejaculate, he says that basically the sex never starts and never ends. So he's in this state, like I think he's in his 60s now, and he's in his state of kind of sexual tension and this kind of feeling with his wife, and it's ever present. And he says that it's a wonderful thing to experience and a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah, just feeling more turned on by life itself, and see that, you know, we are born through sexual energy. Like this world is run by this fuel, you know, and that you can just feel orgasmic without really having sex or anything. You just feel that, like you said, that tension, that attraction, and that just pleasure of being alive, right? Like it's like you can watch a sunset, you know, or whatever, and just feel that tremendous orgasmic bliss inside. And you know, start to cultivating this instead of wasting that, so you feel depleted and drained and moody and lack of passion. You just cultivate that all the time, every day, right? And then that just spreads. You have this like kind of like zest, vitality, and everything just becomes more colorful. I like to say it's like when you practice this for at least 21 days or 90 days, you know, it's like putting on the HD glasses. You know, you see life in HD from, you know, the standard definition to HD, and then it's like the colors are more bright, you know, the food is more tasty, you know, the air is more crisp. It's like life just becomes more full definition.
Yeah, all feeling based, coming from inside. I wonder, there is this chart of how often should men ejaculate to keep his health in some of the Qigong literature. And I was in one class where a guy said that no one that no one thinks about these things in his 20s or 30s. So it's definitely someone who in his 60s or 70s made this chart. So it doesn't have to be really accurate. So what do you think? Like, is there an amount of ejaculation that is suitable for a certain age, certain ages, and certain time? Like, yeah, this is
yeah. I mean, this is where the different traditions differ a little bit from each other. So the Taoists would say there is a set amount of times a man should ejaculate depending on age, but they're also not coherent. So the different Taoists will say different things. There's some will say that it's not about the age, it's actually about the time of the year. So in summer, there's one number, in winter there's another number, right?
okay.
So not even there it's kind of coherent. But when we look in more the tantric tradition is more of like, the more you practice retention and continence, the more energy you will gain, right? So it's more of like, it's not recommended like a certain amount or not. It's just like, practice as much as you can, right? So that's my recommendation. I would never recommend like, you know, ejaculate once a day, once every week, or I don't know what they say, you know, but once a month, I think, if you're like 60 or something like that. I don't...
like for my age group, it's 1 per 21 days.
Oh, and I don't even know that, because you're pretty young, right? So I think I know other numbers as well, which is more frequent, once every 3 days. And I think that's too much. Like, I think some of the recommendations are too much still, especially in the beginning when you start this. Like, most of us growing up in this generation have, you know, infinite access to porn, which is like 1/3 of internet today, right? So we just ejaculated so much in our lifetime, you know, like way more than any other generation ever in history. So I don't think we need to ejaculate more. Like, I think if we stop ejaculating now, we're fine. You know, we ejaculated everything we needed for the rest of our lives, because it's like, you know, there's so much porn out there, you know, and teenagers are going crazy on this, like even having erectile dysfunction when they're 18, right? Because of this culture. So yeah, I think some of the Taoist recommendations are too often. I would rather say trying to stay away as much as possible without being mean to yourself.
Yeah.
What I mean, like, not put yourself down or shame yourself for it, because I see a lot of that too. But at least the first aim should be 21 days. You know, when you master 21 days, aim for 90 days. And when you're done these numbers, it's like, like you feel something happen after 21 days. 21 days. You feel something happens after 48 and then 90. So I would start there.
I see. That's good, because I had this worry that if I just don't ejaculate for too long, it can be damaging for the body. Because if it was used to, you know, doing it like at least on some time frame, this can be hurtful. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
But there's no science to back that up. You know, there's no science saying it can be hurtful, can injure the body in some way. There is some science that may have linked some frequent ejaculation, meaning you ejaculate a lot, to a decrease in prostate cancer. But in the article that you cited before that I wrote, I basically debunked this whole thing in this long article, and I give a lot of reference, a lot of ideas from Tantra why this is not the case. you know, and actually the opposite, you know, you actually increase your health if you do it in the right way, and you increase the testosterone when doing this. So there is no conclusion that the scientists are not in unison and concluding that this is the case. It's just been a link that happened a few years ago, and then that's have just spread, and it's just like, oh, now, you know, ejaculate a lot of time not to get prostate cancer. But we see that it's not the case. It has so much to do with the diet, stress, and lifestyle, because those who ejaculate often, you know, like, we don't know who are they, you know. There's no one who ever did any studies on men who are tantric or yogic or spiritual, because I'm 100% sure that the results would be totally different if you did the studies on men who practice these things, right? So
Yeah.
I never heard and never seen anyone having any issues with this who done it correctly. There, like I said before, when we talked about guidance, right? Like, if you just do things recklessly and you read things on a forum on internet, and then you go and practice something, and you just come up with your own thing, and you interpretate a certain technique or a certain thing yourself, and then you go and execute it in the wrong way, yes, it can be dangerous. So caveat here, it can be dangerous. And then again, that's why you should have the proper guidance and support, so you can avoid that from the get-go.
Yeah. How is it then with the full body orgasms for men? How do they relate to the sexual cultivation, and is it how do they happen generally?
How do full body orgasms happen?
For men, yes.
For men. The experience of them, you mean, or like how to get there? Like how they are experienced?
You can share. Well, you can talk about both. I'm curious about both.
Mm-hmm. So this is a very personal question, right? So everyone will have their own relationship to their own energy body, to their own inner world and inner experience. So some men might experience a full body orgasm as, you know, this tingling of the whole body and this like expansion or warmth, while another man might experience a full body orgasm like electricity and you know, a heart opening and feeling tremendous love, you know. So it's very personal. It's very also, you know, depends on what kind of typology you are. You know, you can be a very grounded, earthy person. You can be a very airy, spaced out person, you know. So it depends on who you are and how you relate to this. So some are very sensitive, so they will feel way more. Some are not sensitive at all, and they will feel it in a very different way. So it's very personal. So we cannot just say that it's one way of feeling and experiencing that. Everyone will have their own experience, and they will use their own language to describe that to someone else. And one's description might not fit someone else's, and they feel like it's different from that, you know. And the first step would be to, you know, control your sexual impulses, control control your ejaculation, and work on opening your energy body, because many times it's blocked. We have never used it. You know, it's like when you're on an unhealthy diet, right? Your arteries get blocked with layers of what's it called, like plaque, or like clogged. They're clogged, right? The arteries, the blood flow is restricted because you eat too much McDonald's or whatever, right? So, and then what you do to reverse that is to remove the junk food and start to eat more healthy, like whole foods, right? That's kind of, and then you start to see your arteries becoming less clogged, and the blood is flowing easier in the veins of the body. So the same principle, the same analogy to the energy structure, that the energy channels are like arteries, like veins, and if you haven't ever cultivated your energy body, it might be blocked, it might be tense, it might not work properly. So you want to start to work on that, to purify that, to open the channels, so you can actually, when you cultivate the energy through semen retention, you can then channel that and move it in the body. That's when you start to have these sensations and experiences.
I see. And we talked a lot about porn. I wonder how do you help guys get off porn? What would you recommend someone who's watching and they struggle with porn addiction?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it depends on where it comes from, right? So if I work with someone, I have to get to know this person, I want to develop a relationship. So I do not work with anyone less than 9 weeks, which is my program, right? So because I don't want to give mediocre results, I want to give a transformation and nothing less than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my minimum, in the program. So when we have that time, we have time to go in depth. It's not just like, here is a quick fix, do this and it will be resolved. No, it's not like that, because it's coming from something very deep. It's connected to something in, like you said before, like in our subconscious mind, rooted in our shadow somewhere, that is fueling this addiction, right, to porn. Because if you cannot stop watching it, and if you want to stop watching it, then it's an addiction, right? Or if you watch it every week or something like that, and you haven't stopped watching it for at least like 6 months at some period of your life, it's probably an addiction, and a lot of us have it, right? So we need to start to look into why we are doing that. It's not just like the quick fix of the dopamine we get, and then we feel good for a moment and then we feel bad afterwards, just like any addiction. We feel shame, we feel guilt, and we say, I will not do it again, and then a week later we're back. So it's not only that's just a chemical hook that we're on, but it's coming from something way deeper. So we need to look at that. So I help men uncover the root cause of where this is coming from, right? And when we remove the root cause, the symptom and the action that why we're doing it falls away, because we're not continuously fueling that. And that's a long-term transformation, and not just like, the root cause is here, and here is the porn addiction, and we just by sheer willpower remove this, but this is still here. And then when we go back into the world, this is starting to slowly creep up again, and it's creep up because this is still feeding it, right? So then it's just like a temporary stop, but then we come back to it.
I see. And what are the common causes of porn addiction from your experience with guys?
Well, it's just like a severe porn addiction. It's usually like a lack of feeling emotions. There's something happened in our childhood or teenage years that we feel that we need a crutch, a coping mechanism just to get by. Maybe we didn't feel loved by our parents. Maybe we felt we were not good enough at school. Maybe we felt there were some feelings that was not really comfortable to feel. So we took a crutch in the external world to help us feel better and get through these points. So these coping mechanisms are good for a certain time, because it helps us survive and move through very difficult periods in our lives. But then they stay with us as habits in our subconscious mind, right? In our shadow. That's when they start to be detrimental for our life and our health and well-being, right? So remind me the question.
What are the common causes of why men get hooked to porn from your experience?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly that. So it's stemming from that. and then we take upon porn addiction to feel better about this, and then it becomes a habit. And that's just one of many things. Like some are more addicted to maybe sweets and sugar. Some are more addicted to working all the time, doing stuff, you know, like workaholics. Some are more addicted to smoking or drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. These are all coping mechanisms, and porn addiction is just one of them, you know, one manifestation of that. Same, just different tools.
I see. Could you share specifically, like if you're allowed to do that, like what kind of events can trigger this so that people can relate?
For example, you had a very overbearing, strict father, right? And your father always wanted you to perform well, you know, like in school, and he put you in sports, and that you needed to be, you know, be someone. And then you started to feel like you always wanted to prove yourself, right, to your dad, you know, that you're a good boy, that you can do things, and that's, you know, you wanted to feel loved basically by your dad, right? So you did all these things so you feel love. So you equate love with, you know, performing or being the good boy, right? So then we develop this mask, but it doesn't feel good, because underlying that is another feeling which the boy is telling himself. He's telling himself that, you know, I'm not accepted as I am. I have to be this person who performs or is number one to get the love from my father. You know, we're not blaming our fathers here. It's just like, this is what happens in a boy's mind. And then he started to feel bad about himself, right? And he started to feel like something wrong with me. I'm not welcome here. It's too much pressure. I don't feel like I'm that kind of sports guy, that I don't want to do sports or whatever, you know. And he feels all this pressure, and he feels tense, and he feels worried. He can't fall asleep at night. And then, you know, all this like pressure and tension, he never learned how to release that, or how to talk about it, or how to deal with it, because it's non-existent in our society today. So, and then he turned 12 or 13, and then he found porn, and it's like, and this release, he just like, you know, after watching porn, he's just felt relaxed. He's not stressed anymore. He felt the dopamine in the brain, the oxytocin, and he felt good for a moment. And he's like, wow, this is freedom. I don't feel that pressure anymore from my dad. I feel all these amazing chemicals running through my body, and I feel freaking great. This porn thing is amazing. It makes me survive these lonely nights, you know, all this pressure from my dad. You see? So, and then it builds and builds and builds. So, and that time maybe is good, because, you know, he managed to, you know, survive that period of time and enter into adulthood at least, you know. But then we don't realize that when we cultivated that, and how it's still with us.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So even if he cuts himself off from the father at some point, the habits and patterns he created through the masturbation and porn just remained.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the relationship to father today. They might have the most wonderful, loving relationship. Doesn't matter. It still stays in there if we don't do anything to revert that, heal that, and reprogram that.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that when it starts to emerge, this pattern, what I see happening is that it, like the emotions of anxiety, guilt, and shame, or whatever that is that the guy is trying to fix, the same way that they get relieved with masturbation, they also get hooked to it. So what here becomes a solution to this, years later becomes a problem, because even though he's having sex with his wife, he still linked the sex with these thoughts, and it's just impossible to cut it with the thoughts. So I think this is where your work and work of sexual workers, if I'm not sure if I use this term correctly, but like people who work with sexuality and men's coaches is really invaluable.
Definitely, definitely. And I think we need more of that now, especially in this day and age when we're trying to, there's so much focus on coaching, life coaching and self-development, right? But I don't feel it's enough for our sex life and our sexuality. And that really needs to take a look at, because we think we're so modern with our technology and information, but sexually we're still kind of lagging behind. There's so much suppression and taboo still left in our culture, in the collective consciousness as well, from religion, from history, from all of that. It's just to look at how much of internet, which is sexual content and porn, right, and in magazines and Instagram, what sells, you know, there's a fixation, an obsession with sex in the world, in our culture, and it's because we haven't really healed that in ourselves on a global level as well. So it's something that's really needed at this time, I think, and the more the better.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Thank you so much, Steffo, for your time. We're running out of time. And before we wrap up, where can guys reach out to you? How can guys find you, or anyone who's listening?
Yeah, Maros, thank you for this invitation. And if anyone wants to find more information, they can go to my website, tantricacademy.com. So there you can watch a free masterclass. You know, if you're struggling in a relationship today, in a marriage, you can watch a free masterclass there. Like I said, that's the article also we've been talking a lot about today, and you can read some of the articles. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a community called the Tantric Brotherhood. We're over 4,000 members right now. We just passed 4,000, and it's a really thriving group of conscious men who really support each other and are on this path of discovering these things, what we talked about today. So really beautiful community. So either the Facebook group or my website, can go there.
Yeah. And there's plenty of free porn as well on his website, so guys, check it out.
No free porn.
Yeah. Good. So Good. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you, Mars. Thank you. Bye-bye.